Marcus Webb had a rule about company parties. Arrive early enough to be seen. Leave early enough to stay out of trouble. He had held to that rule for 6 years at Pinnacle Insurance Group, 6 years of firm handshakes and careful smiles, of knowing exactly which conversations to have and which rooms to avoid. He was 39 years old, a mid-level data analyst in a company where the people who looked like him were rarely invited to the table and almost never forgiven for sitting at the wrong one. He did not drink at work events. He did not linger. He did not give anyone anything to talk about. Tonight was supposed to be no different. The charity gala was held at the Harrington, a hotel on the north side of the city with chandeliers the size of small cars and waitstaff trained to be invisible. Pinnacle Insurance Group had rented out the main ballroom for the evening, a fundraiser for a children's literacy foundation, which gave everyone a reason to feel good about attending and an excuse to drink more than they should. Marcus had arrived at 7:30. By 8:45, he had shaken enough hands, nodded through enough small talk, and quietly declined enough glasses of wine that he felt he had fulfilled whatever unspoken obligation had brought him there. He retrieved his coat from the check-in desk, exchanged a few last words with a colleague from his team, and turned toward the exit. He took a wrong turn, and that wrong turn changed everything. The hallway behind the main ballroom was quieter than it should have been. Dim lighting, the faint bass of music bleeding through the walls, the smell of spilled champagne soaking into carpet. Marcus was halfway down it when he saw her. Lauren Caldwell, Senior Director of Operations, was leaning against the wall with one hand flat against the surface as though the building might move without her permission. Her other hand hung at her side, fingers loosely gripping the strap of a handbag that had already half fallen from her shoulder. Her dress black, expensive, now streaked with something dark across the left side, was twisted at the hem. Her heels were still on, but one had slipped sideways off her foot. She was not simply drunk. She was the kind of drunk that looks like a person dissolving. Marcus stopped. Standing a few feet away from her was Kevin Marsh from Client Relations, a man Marcus had long since cataloged under people to avoid at events like this. Kevin was smiling the way men smile when they believe no one important is watching. His hand had just come to rest on Lauren's shoulder. "Come on," Kevin was saying, his voice low and easy. "Let me call you a car. I'll ride with you. Make sure you get home safe." Marcus walked forward and stood between them. Kevin looked up. His smile stayed, but it changed. "Webb, didn't see you there." "I've got it," Marcus said. Not loudly, not aggressively, just with the flatness that communicated the sentence was also the end of the conversation. Kevin studied him for a moment, then lifted both hands in mock surrender. "All yours, man," he said, and walked away without looking back. Marcus picked up Lauren's handbag from the floor and turned to face her. She was looking at him with the unfocused attention of someone trying very hard to appear more sober than they were. "Marcus," she said. Then, she seemed to lose the rest of the sentence. "Miss Caldwell," he kept his voice even. "Do you have someone I can call?" What Marcus did not know, what Lauren had not told anyone at the gala, was that she had received a letter from her ex-husband's attorney that afternoon. Thomas Caldwell's legal team had been methodical. A list of witnesses, a financial audit, a psychological evaluation request, all aimed at a single conclusion. Thomas wanted full custody of their 9-year-old son, Milo, and intended to argue that Lauren was emotionally unstable and professionally consumed to the point of neglect. Lauren had read the letter twice at her desk, put it face down in her drawer, walked to the gala, and decided to stop thinking for a few hours. The few hours had cost her more than she planned. Her phone was dead. The address of her new apartment she had moved out of the house she had shared with Thomas only 11 days ago was a thing she knew, but the numbers kept rearranging when she tried to say them out loud. She had no family nearby. Her closest friend was a woman named Christine Park, a family law attorney who lived 40 minutes away, and who Lauren, even now, was reluctant to call at 9 o'clock at night with this particular problem. Marcus asked her to unlock her phone so he could charge it from his portable battery. She managed it after 2 tries. He scrolled to her recent contacts, identified 5 names that looked like family or close friends, and called each one. No one answered. He took screenshots of the call log as he went, each unanswered attempt, time-stamped. He told himself it was just documentation, He told himself it was just prudent. He had been black in America long enough to know the difference between prudent and necessary, and to know that sometimes they were the same thing. He stood in that hallway for 11 minutes, running through options. He could call her a car service and send her alone to an address she could not reliably provide. He could leave her in the hotel lobby and hope security sorted it out. He could find a hotel employee and hand the problem to someone else. Each option, when he examined it honestly, meant leaving her in a situation where Kevin Marsh or someone like him would eventually circle back. He thought about Nadia. His daughter was 9 years old. She had performed in her school choir's fall concert tonight, the first one of the year. He had promised to sit in the front row and record it. His neighbor, Ruth Harmon, a retired schoolteacher who had known Marcus since he and his late wife first moved onto the street, had gone to the school to watch Nadia perform and would bring her home afterward. He texted Ruth, "Running late. Might be a while. Is Nadia okay?" Ruth responded in 40 seconds. "Sound asleep. She did wonderful tonight. I recorded the whole thing for you. Take your time." Marcus read that message for a long moment. Then he made his decision. He helped Lauren to his car and drove the 12 minutes to his house on Birchwood Street. Lauren drifted between half sleep and half consciousness the entire ride, saying nothing coherent except, once, very quietly, "Milo," as though the name were something she was holding on to. Marcus helped her inside. He settled her onto the couch, arranged a pillow under her head, and set a glass of water and 2 ibuprofen on the coffee table directly in front of her. Her dress was stained badly enough that sleeping in it would be uncomfortable, so he went to the hallway closet and retrieved a folded set of pajamas his younger sister had left behind during her visit. The previous Thanksgiving, soft cotton, pale gray, still faintly smelling of the fabric softener she preferred. He left them on the armrest of the couch without touching her. He plugged her phone into the charger on the side table, where she would see it immediately upon waking. Then he sat at the kitchen table and wrote on a piece of notepaper in his clearest handwriting, "Miss Caldwell, you were not safe at the hotel. I brought you here. Nothing happened. I slept on the floor in my daughter's room. Your phone is charged on the table. Ibuprofen and water are in front of you. I called 5 people from your contacts, no one answered. I have the call log if you need it. Call me if you need anything. Marcus Webb, Data Analytics, extension 214. He folded the note once and placed it flat on the coffee table, directly beneath the glass of water, where it would be impossible to miss. He checked that the front door was locked. He turned off the living room light, leaving only the small hallway lamp on. He walked to Nadia's room, eased the door open without waking her, and settled onto the floor between her bed and the wall, using the spare blanket from the foot of her mattress. On his phone, before he closed his eyes, he watched the video Ruth had recorded. 43 seconds of his daughter standing in the second row of a small stage, wearing a white blouse and a look of extreme concentration, singing something he could not quite hear through the phone speaker. She looked exactly like her mother. He watched it twice, then set the phone face down on the floor beside him and stared at the ceiling until he fell asleep. Lauren Caldwell came back to consciousness the way people do after a night they would rather not have had in pieces, and none of the pieces fitting together cleanly. First came the light, gray and quiet, coming through curtains she did not recognize. Then the smell, coffee from somewhere nearby, and beneath it the faint neutral scent of a house that belonged to someone else, clean, lived in, unfamiliar. She sat up too fast. The room tilted. She pressed one hand against the cushion beneath her and held still, waiting for the world to settle. When it finally did, she looked down at herself and felt a cold, clarifying shock move through her body. She was wearing clothes that were not hers. Pale gray cotton pajamas, soft with washing, slightly large across the shoulders. She had no memory of putting them on. She had no memory of a great many things, no memory of leaving the hotel, no memory of a car, no memory of a door opening onto this room that was not her room. She stood carefully. The coffee table in front of her held a glass of water and 2 ibuprofen. Her eyes moved around the room. A couch, a bookshelf, a small television, a child's drawing taped to the wall, beside the window crayon, blue sky, 2 figures holding hands, the taller one labeled Dad in unsteady capital letters. She found her phone on the side table, fully charged. She picked it up. Her hands were not entirely steady. When she had lurched upright from the couch, the sudden movement jolted the coffee table just enough the glass of water shifted, and the note beneath it slipped silently backward off the edge and dropped into the narrow gap between the table and the couch, disappearing from sight. Lauren did not see it fall. She was already unlocking her phone. Christine Park answered on the second ring. "Lauren, it's not even 7. What's wrong?" Lauren kept her voice low. "I woke up in someone else's house," she said. "Christine, I don't remember leaving the hotel. I'm wearing someone else's clothes, and I don't know what happened." There was a short silence. When Christine spoke again, her voice had shifted precise, and without warmth, the voice she used in depositions. "Whose house?" "Marcus Webb. He works under me. Data analytics." Another silence, longer this time. Lauren heard Christine exhale. "Listen to me carefully," Christine said. "Do not speak to him. Do not eat or drink anything in that house. Get outside right now, and call me back from the street. We need to get ahead of this before he does." "Christine, I don't know that anything." "Lauren." The name landed like a gavel. "You are in the middle of a custody battle. You woke up in a subordinate's home with no memory of how you got there. I don't care what did or didn't happen. What matters right now is the sequence of events, and right now, that sequence is not in your favor. Do you understand me?" Lauren understood her. She had been a client of Christine's for 8 months. She knew how Christine's mind worked, always 3 steps ahead, always oriented toward the outcome, always treating the facts of a situation as raw material to be shaped, rather than a story to be understood. It was what made Christine an exceptional attorney. It was, Lauren was beginning to sense, not the only thing that mattered right now, but she was tired, and her head was pounding, and the room was unfamiliar, and the easiest thing, the thing her body wanted, was to let Christine take the wheel. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'm going outside." What Lauren did not know, as she crossed the living room toward the front door, was that Christine had already seen Marcus Webb's name before. 3 weeks earlier, while preparing for the custody proceedings, Christine had flagged him as a potential liability. He was one of the few people who had witnessed Lauren crying in a hallway after a difficult board meeting in February. She had not told Lauren this. It had not seemed relevant at the time. It seemed very relevant now. By the time Lauren reached the front porch, Christine had already made a decision. Lauren did not know about the email until much later. Marcus heard the front door open. He was in the kitchen with a mug of coffee, still wearing the clothes he had slept in. He had been awake since 5:40, had checked on Nadia still sleeping, one arm thrown over the edge of the mattress in the boneless way children sleep, and had come to the kitchen to think. He heard the door, then silence, then what sounded like a voice speaking quietly on the porch. He did not go outside. He poured a second mug of coffee and set it on the counter in case it was wanted. He waited. What came instead of Lauren was Nadia. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, a pattern of small yellow stars with her hair pushed sideways from sleep, and the expression she wore every morning for the first few minutes of consciousness, which was one of vague philosophical suspicion directed at the entire concept of being awake. "Is the lady still here?" she asked. "On the porch, I think." Nadia processed this. Then she turned and walked into the living room with the directness of a child who had not yet learned to approach other people's situations carefully. Marcus followed her to the doorway. Nadia had stopped at the edge of the living room, facing Lauren, who had come back inside and was now standing just inside the front door with her phone held at her side. They regarded each other, the woman who did not know where she was, and the child who did not yet understand why that should be complicated. "You're still here," Nadia said, not accusing, simply confirming. Yes," Lauren said. "I'm sorry. I was just... Are you hungry? Dad makes oatmeal when he's sick. You look like you might be sick." Something crossed Lauren's face, quick, involuntary, impossible to name precisely. She looked at Nadia the way people sometimes look at things that are unexpectedly, almost painfully straightforward. "I'm okay," she said. "Thank you." Nadia nodded, apparently satisfied. Then, "My dad missed my concert last night because he had to bring you here. I'm not mad," she added, with the emphasis of someone who wanted it on record that they had considered being mad and chosen not to be. Miss Ruth recorded it, but he promised he'd be in the front row. Lauren looked at Marcus. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, and he said nothing, because there was nothing useful to say. "Nadia," he said instead, "go get dressed, okay? I'll make breakfast in a few minutes." Nadia disappeared down the hallway, with small, deliberate footsteps on the hardwood floor. Lauren stood in the living room and looked at the space around her with new attention. On the bookshelf beside the television, a framed photograph of Nadia at a birthday party, gap-toothed and laughing. Beside it, a second photograph, smaller, in a simpler frame of a young woman lying in a hospital bed, smiling despite the exhaustion in her face. She had Nadia's eyes, the same shape of forehead, the same quality of looking directly at the camera, as though she wanted the person holding it to know she was paying attention. On the refrigerator, Nadia's class schedule held up by a fish-shaped magnet, a permission slip with "Please sign and return" printed across the top, and a child's drawing of a house with an enormous sun. By the front door, a pair of small sneakers, laces already tied and ready. In the corner of the living room floor, a folded blanket and a flattened pillow, arranged neatly, marking where someone had slept. Lauren looked at the blanket for a long moment. This was not the home of a man with bad intentions. She understood that now with the clarity that comes not from argument but from simply looking a man raising a daughter alone, doing it carefully, with tied shoelaces and fish-shaped magnets, and a blanket folded on the floor so a stranger could sleep safely on his couch. She noticed a faint rectangular impression in the slight dust at the edge of the coffee table, where something had been lying. She knelt down and looked along the gap between the table and the couch. The note was there, white against the dark floor, folded once. She picked it up and read it. She read it twice. She was still holding it when her phone buzzed with a message from Christine. "Done. I've sent a preliminary email to Pinnacle HR. Protective measure only. Call me when you're out of there." Lauren sat down on the couch. She could hear Marcus in the kitchen, the sound of a cabinet opening, the quiet clatter of a bowl being set on the counter, the silence of a person trying not to make any more noise than necessary in their own home. She read the note a third time. "I called 5 people from your contacts, no one answered. I have the call log if you need it." She opened her call log. The 5 missed calls were there, made from her number, between 9:14 and 9:41 the previous evening. One of them was Christine. Christine, who had not answered. Christine, who had just sent an email to Pinnacle Insurance Group's Human Resources Department. Lauren put the phone down on the cushion beside her and pressed her palms flat against her knees. From the kitchen she could hear Nadia's voice asking something about orange juice, and Marcus's voice answering low, measured. The voice of a parent trying to keep a morning normal when the morning is not normal. On the coffee table, Marcus's phone buzzed. Lauren could see the screen from where she was sitting. The preview read, "Mr. Webb, please remain available. Do not leave your residence. Await a call from Human Resources." She watched the notification disappear from the screen. She heard Marcus's footsteps stop in the kitchen. Marcus read the notification once, set his phone face down on the counter, and finished pouring the orange juice. He set the glass in front of Nadia's place at the table. He went to the cabinet and measured out the oatmeal with the automatic precision of a person who has made the same breakfast so many times his hands know the routine without being asked. He turned on the burner. He watched the water. In the living room, Lauren had not moved. Nadia came down the hallway in jeans and a striped shirt, her hair pulled back into something attempting to be a ponytail. She climbed onto her chair, looked at the bowl in front of her, and then looked toward the living room. "Is she staying for breakfast?" Nadia asked, in the tone of someone for whom this was a logistical question rather than a complicated one. "I don't know," Marcus said. "You made enough for 3. Marcus looked at the pot. He had, apparently, made enough for 3. "Eat your breakfast," he said. His phone rang at 8:03. He wiped his hands on a dish towel and stepped into the narrow hallway between the kitchen and the bedrooms, just far enough that Nadia would not hear clearly. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Patricia Wynn, Deputy Director of Human Resources. Her voice was professionally neutral, not cold, not warm, the temperature of institutional caution. "Mr. Webb, I want to start by saying this is a preliminary conversation, No formal action has been taken. We've received a communication this morning that involves you, and we're required to follow up. Do you understand? I understand, Marcus said. Can you walk me through what happened last evening at the Harrington? He walked her through it, keeping his voice level, his sentences short. He described finding Lauren in the hallway, Kevin Marsh's presence, his decision to remove her from the situation, the attempts to reach her contacts, the screenshots, the drive home, the note, the clothes left out, the sleeping arrangement, the ibuprofen, the phone on the charger. He said all of it without raising his voice. When he finished, Patricia said, "Do you have documentation of the calls you made from Miss Caldwell's phone?" "Yes. Screenshots. Time-stamped. I can email them within 10 minutes. "That would be helpful, Mr. Webb." He ended the call and stood in the hallway with his back against the wall. The thing about doing everything right, he thought, was that it did not actually protect you. It gave you something to point to afterward. It gave the people who wanted to believe you a place to stand. But it did not stop the machinery from moving once someone had set it in motion. The email had been sent. The process had started. And processes, once started, had their own momentum that had very little to do with what was true. He walked back toward the kitchen. Nadia was sitting at the table, with her spoon hovering over her bowl, not eating. She was watching him with the careful attention children apply when they know an adult situation is happening around them, and they have not yet been told what to make of it. "Dad," she said, "are you in trouble?" "No," he said. She looked at him the way she had looked at him on the 2 or 3 occasions in her life when he had said something she was not sure she believed. "You look like the face you make when something is wrong but you don't want to say so." He sat down across from her. "I'm handling something. It's complicated, but I'm handling it. Are the police going to come here?" The question landed with the weight that only a child's direct question can carry, no cushioning, no diplomatic framing, just the thing itself, set down on the table between them. Marcus put his spoon down. He looked at his daughter, her 9-year-old face, careful and worried, trying to read his the way she had been reading it her whole life, because for 3 years she had understood, in the way children understand things they have never been explicitly told, that her father was the only thing standing between her and a world that could become very uncertain very quickly. He got up from his chair and crouched down beside her so they were the same height. "No one is coming here," he said. "I did nothing wrong. I helped someone who needed help, and now I have to explain that to some people, and I'm going to explain it clearly, and it's going to be fine." Nadia studied his face from a distance of about 8 inches. Promise? He had made a policy, after his wife died, of not making promises he could not guarantee keeping. Some promises were about effort, and some were about outcome, and he would always promise the first kind, but not the second. "I promise I'm going to do everything I can," he said. Nadia seemed to accept this. She turned back to her oatmeal. After a moment, in a smaller voice, "I believe you, Dad." He stood up, pressed his hand briefly to the top of her head, and walked to the hallway to send the screenshots to Patricia Wynne. He did not allow himself to go to the bathroom and close the door until Nadia had finished breakfast and gone to get her backpack. Then he stood in front of the mirror and looked at his own face. He had done everything right. He had documentation. He had a note. He had a neighbor who could confirm when he arrived home and where he slept. He had done everything right. And it still required someone else to decide what happened next. He let that sit for exactly as long as it needed to. Then he straightened up, turned off the light, and went back to the kitchen because Nadia needed to get to school, and the morning still had to be gotten through. And some things you simply keep moving forward through whether you feel like it or not. Lauren was standing at the kitchen doorway when he came down the hallway. She was still in the gray pajamas, holding the folded note in one hand and her phone in the other. "I read your note," she said. "I figured. I didn't see it this morning. It fell behind the table." "I know." She looked down at the note. "Christine sent an email to HR before I could." She stopped. Tried again. "I didn't tell her to do that. I called her and I was scared, and I didn't. I didn't tell her to send anything." Marcus leaned against the wall and said nothing. "I saw the notification on your phone," Lauren said. "I know they already called you." "They did." She looked up. "I'm going to fix it." He studied her for a moment. "Miss Caldwell." Lauren. He said it carefully. I appreciate that. I do. But I need you to understand that a phone call to HR explaining there was a misunderstanding is not the same as this not having happened. There's a record now. There's a file. And once something is in a file, I know, she said. I know that. She said it with the exhaustion of someone who spent her professional life inside institutional systems and understood exactly how they worked and how little mercy they extended to people caught in them. I'm going to do more than make a phone call, she said. She called Christine first. She stood on the front porch and Marcus stayed inside, and the conversation lasted 9 minutes. He could not hear the words, but could hear the shape of it, Lauren's voice starting low and ending firm, the long silences in the middle where Christine was arguing, the single moment near the end when Lauren's voice rose slightly and came back down with a finality that did not invite further discussion. When she came back inside, Christine is withdrawing the email. I've asked her to send a written retraction to HR within the hour. What does that mean for your custody case? Marcus asked. Lauren was quiet for a moment. Christine won't continue representing me after this. She thinks I'm making a decision that will hurt my case. Will it? Probably. She said it without flinching. Thomas's team will find out I was intoxicated at a company event. They'll use it. I'll have to find new representation and explain to a new attorney why my previous one withdrew a week before our next hearing. She paused. It's going to be a difficult few months. Marcus said nothing for a moment. You didn't have to do that, he said finally. Yes, Lauren said. I did. She called Patricia Wynn at Human Resources at 9:17. Marcus sat at the kitchen table while she made the call from the living room. He could hear her voice measured, clear. The voice of someone who had spent years in rooms where the quality of your authority depended on how little doubt you allowed into your delivery. She told Patricia that Marcus Webb had acted entirely appropriately, that she had been in a situation where she was not safe and he had removed her from it, that he had attempted to contact her family and friends repeatedly, that he had left a written note explaining everything, provided water and medication, arranged separate sleeping accommodations, and charged her phone, that the allegation implied in Christine's email did not reflect what had occurred, and that she was formally and without reservation withdrawing any implication of misconduct on Mr. Webb's part. Then, she asked about the hotel's security footage. The footage from the Harrington's corridor cameras arrived at Pinnacle's HR department by 11 o'clock that morning, after Lauren personally called the hotel's general manager and requested it. The recording showed everything. Marcus stepping between Kevin Marsh and Lauren, picking up her handbag, making call after call on her phone while she leaned against the wall, guiding her toward the exit with one careful hand, never once looking over his shoulder like a man with something to hide, only forward, like a man trying to do the next right thing. Patricia Wynn called Marcus at 11:22 to tell him the matter was closed. He was sitting on the front porch steps when the call came in. The morning had gone quiet. Nadia was at school. Lauren had arranged a rideshare from the front curb an hour earlier. The street was ordinary and still in the way streets are on weekday mornings, all the visible activity belonging to other people's lives. The footage corroborates your account fully, Patricia said. I want to apologize for the distress this morning caused you, Mr. Webb. You acted with considerable decency in a difficult situation, and you should not have been placed in the position you were in today. Thank you, Marcus said. He sat on the steps for a while after the call ended, in the thin autumn sunlight, and did not move. Relief. Yes, the boneless relief of a threat that has passed and left the body still braced for impact. But underneath it something quieter and less comfortable, having to do with the distance between where he had been at 8 o'clock this morning and where he was now, and how entirely that distance had been determined by another person's choice to tell the truth. He had done everything right, and it had still required someone else to save him. He sat with that for a while. Then he got up and went inside and washed the breakfast bowls. Lauren came to the house 4 days later. She called first from her personal cell at 6:45 in the evening, not from her work line. I'd like to come by, she said. If that's all right. Marcus thought about it. Nadia will be home. I know, Lauren said. That's actually fine. What I have to say doesn't require privacy. She arrived at 7. Dark jeans, a coat, no indication of the senior director of operations. She looked like a person who had not been sleeping enough. She was carrying a small paper bag from the bakery 2 blocks over. I didn't know if that was appropriate, she said, holding out the bag. Nadia mentioned oatmeal. I thought maybe something that wasn't oatmeal might be welcome. Nadia appeared at Marcus's shoulder, looked at the bag, and said, "Is that from the place with the cinnamon things?" "It is," Lauren said. "Okay," said Nadia, and took the bag to the kitchen with the decisiveness of someone who had just resolved a question to their satisfaction. Marcus stepped back from the door. They sat in the living room. Nadia was at the kitchen table, technically doing homework, actually listening while pretending not to. Marcus did not point this out. Lauren sat in the armchair across from the couch and looked at the space she had woken up in 4 days ago. The same lamp, the same bookshelf, the same photograph of the woman in the hospital bed who had Nadia's eyes. "I've been thinking about what to say since Tuesday," Lauren began. "You don't have to." "I do." She looked at him. "Please." He was quiet. "I woke up scared," she said. "That's the truth of it. I woke up, and I didn't know where I was, and I didn't remember anything, and the first thing I did was call someone whose job it is to protect me from threats, and she treated you like a threat, and I let her." She paused. "I had your note. I found it after. I saw what you did, the calls, the pillow on the floor, all of it, and I still needed a few more minutes before I understood what kind of person does those things." "You were scared," Marcus said. "I understand that. Understanding it doesn't make it acceptable." She said it firmly, without self-pity. "I know what could have happened to you. I know what the file would have meant. And I know what it means for a man in your position, in this company, to have something like that attached to his name even if it goes nowhere." She looked at him steadily. "My fear almost did that to you. And you had done nothing, except exactly what a decent person is supposed to do." Marcus looked at his hands for a moment. Then he looked up. "I appreciate you saying that," he said. "I appreciate what you did with HR, and the footage, and what it cost you to withdraw Christine." He paused. "I'm not going to pretend none of this happened. I'm not going to tell you it's fine, because it wasn't fine, and saying so wouldn't be honest." "I know," Lauren said, "but I understand why you reacted the way you did. You're in the middle of something that's trying to take your son away from you. You woke up with no memory in a stranger's house." He looked at her carefully. "I'm not interested in holding that against you forever." Lauren was quiet for a moment. Something in her face shifted, not dramatically, but genuinely, the way faces shift when something held tightly is finally released. "Thank you," she said. From the kitchen, without looking up from her homework, Nadia said, "Do you want to stay for dinner? Dad's making pasta." Marcus looked at his daughter. Lauren looked at Marcus. "I wasn't planning on pasta," Marcus said. "Yes, you were," Nadia said. "You took out the pot." Lauren pressed her lips together briefly in the way people do when they are trying not to smile at the wrong moment. "I don't want to intrude," she said. "You're not intruding," Nadia said, with the authority of someone who had determined this independently and considered the matter settled. Marcus stood up and went to the kitchen. He did not formally extend an invitation. He simply took out a second pot. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday evening in November, Nadia Webb stood in the second row of her school's winter choir concert, the holiday show, different from the fall performance Marcus had missed, and sang, with the full-throated conviction of a child who has been practicing the same 4 songs for 6 weeks and is finally getting to perform them for a room full of people who love her. Marcus sat in the front row, left of center, phone raised and recording. He had arrived 20 minutes early. He was there from the first note to the last, near the back of the auditorium. In the far right section where the overhead light did not quite reach, Lauren Caldwell sat alone in a folding chair with her coat in her lap. She had not been invited. She had simply come not as his boss, not as the person who had nearly upended his life, but as someone who needed to witness the thing she had almost taken from him. She watched Marcus watch his daughter. She thought about Milo, who was with Thomas this weekend, and who had called her that afternoon to tell her about a book he was reading. She had sat in her car for 10 minutes after that call, just holding the phone. The answer to what she felt had been complicated, but underneath the complicated, something she had not expected, something that resembled, at a distance, the early shape of all right. She was not all right yet. She had a new attorney and a hearing in 6 weeks, and a version of events she would have to explain to a judge that was not entirely flattering. But she had told the truth when it would have been easier and more practical not to, and she found that this had not made things worse. It had made things different, and different, she was learning, was not the same as worse. On the stage, Nadia found her father's face in the crowd and waved. Marcus waved back. His phone was still recording. Lauren watched this from the back of the room and did not announce herself. She had come to witness something, and she was witnessing it, and that was enough. When the concert ended and the families began moving toward the stage, she stood, put on her coat, and slipped out through the side door before the lights came fully up. In the months that followed, Lauren restructured Pinnacle Insurance Group's event policy. She wrote it herself, without delegating it to HR, and she was specific: transportation assistance for any employee who was not safe to drive after a company event, a designated point of contact on site at every function, and a formal protection clause for any employee who assisted a colleague in a vulnerable situation, a clause that made clear, in plain language, that helping someone was not grounds for suspicion. She did not announce it as a response to anything. She presented it as operational best practice. Marcus read the policy memo on a Tuesday morning in January. He read it twice. Then he saved it to his desktop and went back to his work. He did not know, and Lauren did not tell him, that she had written the protection clause at 11:30 at night, sitting alone at her kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold beside her, because she had needed it to exist in the world, and she was the only person in a position to make it exist. Some things you do not do for recognition. You do them because you looked at what you almost allowed to happen, and you decided you were not willing to let the world stay the shape it was.